Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, August 7th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will reach a high of 100.1 degrees Fahrenheit with a low of 71.9 degrees. Remember to stay hydrated and find some shade if you're spending time outdoors in this heat. Coming up on Alex's News, we'll be looking into the economic ramifications of what's been described as President Trump's war on truth and what that might mean for our wallets. Then, we'll also examine the reasoning behind specific chip tariffs connected to President Trump, dissecting which targets are being affected and why. All this and more coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Good morning, everyone. We begin today with a concerning development on the economic front, as former U.S. Labor Secretary Robert Reich has articulated a growing unease he calls a, quote, war on the truth, end quote, within our federal economic institutions. This comes in the wake of a significant and unusual staffing change at a critical agency. For more on this, we turn to our reporter Ethan, who has been following the details. Ethan, unpack this for us. What exactly has happened?
Grace, this all stems from events that unfolded just 6 days ago, on August 1st, when President Donald Trump abruptly fired Erica McIntyre, the Commissioner of Labor Statistics. This dismissal occurred mere hours after the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, released what was a weaker-than-expected jobs report for July 2025. According to reporting from CBS News and AP News, the president took to social media, claiming, without evidence, that the numbers were, quote, rigged and fake, end quote, designed to make him and Republicans, quote, look bad, end quote. He even went so far as to label McIntyre a, quote, Biden political appointee, end quote.
So he publicly announced her removal, citing these claims of rigged numbers. What exactly was in that jobs report that he found so objectionable?
Well, Grace, the report indicated that the U.S. economy only added 73,000 jobs in July. But perhaps even more significantly, as CBS News and The Guardian reported, the figures for May and June were substantially revised downward by a combined 258,000 positions. This marked the steepest two-month downward revision on record outside of the pandemic, which is quite a stark figure, certainly one that might make a president feel a bit of a statistical sting.
That is quite the revision. Now, you mentioned President Trump called her a, quote, Biden political appointee, end quote. Was she in fact a partisan hire, or is there more to her story?
That's a great question, Grace, and it cuts right to the heart of the matter. Well, President Biden did nominate Ms. McIntyre in July 2023, and she was confirmed by the Senate in January 2024, her confirmation vote was overwhelmingly bipartisan. Politico and Wikipedia confirmed she passed with an 86-8 vote, indicating broad support from both sides of the aisle. She began her 4-year term on January 29, 2024, and certainly was not seen as a partisan operative by those who voted for her confirmation.
It sounds like her appointment had widespread backing. For those at home, can you explain what the Bureau of Labor Statistics does, and why its independence is so crucial? And how unprecedented is a firing like this?
The BLS, Grace, is truly a backbone of our economic understanding. Established way back in 1884, its mission is to collect, analyze, and disseminate accurate, objective, economic, and statistical information free from political interference. It is designed to be a non-political agency. While the commissioner is appointed for a 4-year term, quote, unless sooner removed, end quote, as outlined by Cornell Law School, the circumstances for removal aren't detailed by law. According to The Guardian and Time, President Trump's firing of McIntyre specifically for disagreeing with employment data appears to be unprecedented in the agency's long history for such a reason. It is certainly a job that should not be a numbers game when it comes to political whims.
And that brings us to former Labor Secretary Robert Reich's strong condemnation. He called this a, quote, war on the truth, end quote. What was his overall take on this situation?
Reich, who served under President Bill Clinton, was unequivocal, Grace. Speaking on Democracy Now!, he characterized McIntyre's dismissal as another indicator of, quote, growing authoritarianism, end quote, in the U.S., stating that Trump was, quote, riding roughshod over our democratic institutions and truth, end quote. Reich emphasized that the BLS's independence is the, quote, crown jewel, end quote, of the government's efforts to explain our economy. He argued that politicizing the BLS absolutely destroys its credibility and erodes public trust, saying Trump had, quote, essentially destroyed the credibility of the BLS, end quote, which is quite a damning statement. He also noted, as CBS News confirmed, that revisions to monthly jobs reports are routine.
And it is not just Robert Reich. What have other experts and economists had to say about this particular firing?
Widespread concern, Grace. According to CBS News and the Washington Post, economists, policymakers, and even some Republican lawmakers have voiced alarm. William Beach, who actually served as BLS commissioner during Trump's first term, publicly criticized the dismissal, telling InsightGlobal.com that the commissioner has no ability to alter reported data and that the action, quote, undermines the credibility of federal economic statistics, end quote. Economists generally agree that federal statistical agencies like the BLS are the, quote, gold standard, end quote, for producing timely and accurate reports, operating as non-political entities. As IAWPO.org noted, data revisions are often described as a, quote, feature, not a bug, end quote.
So the experts are largely in agreement that this is a dangerous path. Now, Ethan, Reich also drew a parallel between the BLS firing and President Trump's ongoing pressure on Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. How are these two situations connected in his view?
Reich sees them as two sides of the same coin, Grace, both part of this, quote, war on the truth, end quote. He highlighted on Democracy Now! That Trump has reportedly called Powell, whom Trump himself initially appointed, derogatory names like a, quote, total and complete moron, end quote, and a, quote, disaster, end quote. Trump's efforts have focused on pressuring Powell and the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates faster than they might otherwise.
And what would be the impact if President Trump were to successfully, as Reich puts it, quote, cow, end quote, the Federal Reserve into altering its independent decisions?
Reich warns that if Trump successfully coerces the Federal Reserve, either by replacing Powell or by pressuring him to reduce interest rates against the Fed's independent judgment, it would significantly impact the market's confidence in the Fed's actions. This erosion of confidence, he explained on Democracy Now!, could lead to a spike in longer-term interest rates. Investors, he warns, would assume the Fed is no longer rigorously fighting inflation, which could have serious repercussions for our economy. Both the BLS and the Fed are meant to be apolitical guardians of economic information and stability.
Ethan, thank you so much for breaking down what is truly a pivotal story. We appreciate you shedding light on these crucial developments for us.
My pleasure, Grace.
When we come back, we have another story for you.
Sources for this segment include Democracy Now!, CBS News, The Guardian, The Washington Post, AP News, Politico, Al Jazeera, Cornell Law School, GoVEXEC, Time Wikipedia, InsightGlobal.com, and IAWPO.org.
Welcome back, everyone. We have some significant news breaking from the White House yesterday, impacting the technology sector and potentially your wallet. For the details, we turn to our brilliant reporter, Chloe, who's been keeping a close eye on this. Chloe, what's the latest from Washington on President Trump's new economic plan?
Grace, it was quite a revelation yesterday. From the Oval Office, President Trump announced a bold new economic policy, a 100% tariff on imported computer chips. This substantial import tax comes with a crucial exemption, applying only unless companies commit to building manufacturing facilities here in the United States. As Yahoo Finance and PBS NewsHour reported, President Trump explicitly stated, quote, if you're building in the United States of America, there's no charge, end quote. His second term began on January 20, 2025, as Gemini Flash's own reporting noted.
100% is a huge number. What's the president's rationale behind such a bold move?
Its primary goal, President Trump stated, is to incentivize domestic semiconductor production, boosting U.S. manufacturing and jobs. The administration aims to prevent future chip shortages, like those experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, which contributed to higher prices and inflation. It also addresses U.S. reliance on foreign-made semiconductors, especially from Taiwan, which dominates the market. President Trump described this as a shtick approach, designed to coerce companies into establishing factories domestically, as PBS NewsHour detailed.
So a stick approach, how does that compare to previous strategies we've seen, particularly from the Biden administration?
This represents a stark contrast to the Biden administration's carrot strategy, the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act of 2022. That act, signed on August 9, 2022, which will be its third anniversary in just 2 days, provided approximately $52.7 billion in funding and incentives for new U.S. chip plants. While both aim to boost domestic production, tariffs increase costs for consumers, whereas subsidies lower production costs for domestic producers, as Gemini Flash's economic comparison highlighted. President Trump has openly opposed the CHIPS Act, favoring tariffs instead.
That's quite a difference. What are the potential real-world implications of a 100% tariff on consumers and the broader economy? It sounds like it could really chip away at our budgets.
You hit the nail on the head, Grace. Economists widely warn that such high tariffs could lead to significantly higher prices for a wide range of products dependent on chips, including electronics and automobiles, as importers typically pass on costs. Multiple reports, including from Yahoo Finance, CBS News, and PBS NewsHour, highlighted this concern. These tariffs could also contribute to sluggish economic growth. Risks include retaliation from trade partners, increased global tech protectionism, and potential market fragmentation.
Despite these warnings, we've seen some positive investor reactions, particularly with tech giants. How does that align?
Investor reaction was notably positive, Grace. Apple stock gained 5% in regular trading, according to Yahoo Finance. During the announcement, Apple CEO Tim Cook unveiled a new $100 billion commitment to U.S.-based manufacturing, part of a larger $600 billion investment over 4 years, as reported by CBS News. Apple has reportedly secured an exemption from the tariffs due to this. Other major chip producers like Intel, TSMC, and Samsung are also making significant U.S. investments, often spurred by CHIPS Act funding, and are expected to be exempt, as detailed by CBS News and Gemini Flash.
So it seems the biggest players are getting a pass. If these giants are largely exempt, who exactly is this 100% tariff aimed at?
That's the key, Grace. According to Gemini Flash's analysis, the tariff is primarily aimed at companies without existing U.S. manufacturing commitments, especially those based in China. It also targets smaller firms, startups lacking capital for U.S. plants, producers of older legacy chips, and fabless design companies relying on non-U.S. foundries. For chips from these non-exempted sources, the 100% tariff would drastically increase costs, forcing U.S. companies to shift sourcing or face higher prices.
Fascinating. So what does this policy ultimately achieve for the U.S. economy, and what are the global ramifications?
While reinforcing U.S. investment trends and encouraging other commitments, the immediate disruptive impact on critical U.S. industries relying on high-end chips is mitigated by these exemptions. However, consumer prices for end products could still increase for certain chip types if domestic manufacturing can't scale fast enough. The policy also creates a structural disadvantage for smaller firms and could lead to geopolitical and trade repercussions. Global demand for computer chips remains high, with sales increasing 19.6% in the year ending June, as reported by Yahoo Finance and PBS NewsHour.
It sounds like a complex web of implications we'll be watching closely. Chloe, thank you for breaking down this significant story for us. We appreciate you keeping us in the loop on this high-stakes tariff announcement. Here are some other headlines. The Department of Homeland Security is looking for a few good men and women of any age. The agency has officially scrapped age restrictions for new recruits to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Previously, applicants for deportation officer positions had to be under 40. Now that cap is gone, with officials saying new hires can be as young as 18. The move is part of a well-funded push to hire 10,000 additional staff for what's anticipated to be a large-scale deportation operation. To attract candidates, the agency is certainly trying to ice the competition, offering signing bonuses of up to $50,000 and student loan repayment. A social media campaign featuring a father and son in tactical gear under the slogan "No Age KP" has been launched to promote the hiring blitz. Critics, however, have raised alarms about the rapid expansion, citing concerns over due process and an immigration court system already facing a backlog of nearly 4 million cases. In other immigration news, the United States has struck a controversial deal with Rwanda to accept up to 250 immigrants deported from American soil. Under the agreement, the East African nation will vet and approve each individual, who will then be provided with support to integrate into Rwandan society. The White House says it's actively seeking other third-country destinations, while Rwanda has framed its decision as a humanitarian gesture rooted in its own history of displacement. The deal has drawn sharp criticism from human rights advocates who point to a similar plan between the UK and Rwanda that was ultimately ruled unlawful by the British Supreme Court, which determined Rwanda was not a safe country for migrants. It's a plan that has some saying the administration is Rwandan out of good options. Meanwhile, if you're planning a trip to the US from certain countries, you might need to bring more than just your passport. You may need a bond, a visa bond. The Trump administration has revived a pilot program requiring some visitors to pay up to $15,000 as a condition of entry. The program targets applicants for business and tourist visas from countries with high overstay rates, starting with Malawi and Zambia. If the visitor leaves on time, the bond is refunded. If they overstay, it's forfeited. The State Department calls it a common-sense measure, but immigration advocates have labeled it a legalized shakedown and a paywall that will turn a vacation into a financial boondoggle for many. And now for a story that's creating a lot of buzz. Chinese authorities have launched a high-tech war on mosquitoes amid a massive chikungunya outbreak in the southern province of Guangdong. With over 7,000 people sickened with high fevers and debilitating joint pain, officials are leaving no puddle of stagnant water unturned. The response includes drones to spray insecticide in hard-to-reach areas, heavy fines for residents who don't clear standing water, and even the release of special fish and a larger elephant mosquito, whose larvae prey on the virus-carrying species. The US CDC has issued a travel advisory for the region. Finally, the Trump administration is cutting nearly $500 million in federal funding for mRNA vaccine research, a move that has sparked widespread condemnation from the scientific community. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. stated the administration is shifting funds to what he called safer platforms like whole virus vaccines. However, health experts are sounding the alarm. Epidemiologist Michael Osterholm called it one of the worst decisions I've seen in 50 years, while former Surgeon General Jerome Adams warned the cuts will cost lives. They note that mRNA technology was the key to the rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines under Operation Warp Speed and has promising applications for treating cancer and autoimmune diseases. Critics fear the decision is a real shot in the arm for our nation's adversaries in biomedical research. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexandra King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.